wanted to continue our discussion with our new exercise and talk about vector shape tools. Now, inside of Photopea, these tools are located right here, and it would seem to, if we were to hover over them or even click on them, it looks like they're just normal shapes, but these are completely different. These vector shapes are completely different from these selection tools that are up here that we've been using. And the difference is that vectors are vector-based, which means that they're based on points, vector points that are plotted on a graph. And because they're based in this kind of math equation, we can scale them up and down, and we don't have to worry about resolution. So once you draw them, you can scale them up however big you need them to be or however small you need them to be, and you don't have to worry about it becoming pixelated because, again, they are vector-based. There is software out there like Adobe Illustrator that is entirely a vector-based program, so you can scale up images and not have to worry about resolution, whereas here in Photopea we do have to worry about resolution. The first kind of thing I want to do to this composition is we need to put in a background, because I've cut this out from the background, this bridge from the background, and I want to add in my own kind of background color. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to give it a background color, and I'm going to pick a new color for my foreground color, and maybe pick a yellow, maybe a lighter yellow, and click OK. And then do my Option or Alt backspace, Option delete on a Mac, Alt backspace on a PC, and fill this layer with that yellow color. And because we cut out this bridge and we provided this layer, we can now make our own layer. I mean, we can do anything we want to now because this bridge is cut out from its background. Now I've filled this layer, and next I want to make some vector shapes with my vector shape tools, and I'm going to pick ellipse, the ellipse tool, and start to draw. Now the difference between the vector shapes, also between those and the selection tools, is that the vector shapes you can provide and give it a stroke and a fill color, things that aren't necessarily easy to do with the selection tool. So if I draw a circle holding shift down, it automatically fills that shape with red, and we can actually change this color on the fly. I can change those colors really easily, and it of course fills that and changes, and it's all good. But we also have access to the stroke. Now the fill color is the inside of a shape, and the stroke color is the color side. We can change the color of the fill and stroke, and we can also change the weight or the thickness of the stroke. The stroke is the outline. I can click this arrow that's pointed down here, and I get this slider bar, and look what it does when I slide that up. I can go all the way to 150 points as my stroke width. And if I need to, I can even go higher. I can go and type in 400 if I want to. 400 points. Look how big that circle and that stroke is. Now, if I don't want to have a stroke, I can take it off by hitting this red X and give it a fill type of none, and it would just be the fill. I could also do it the other way around and take out the fill and just have a stroke by selecting that fill color. So I have done this, and let us duplicate this kind of design. I'm going to take down the amount here so it's not so thick. And I'm going to scale this down. I'm holding shift down because I don't want to squish or squash my perfect circle. So I'm going to hold shift, and that constrains my proportions. And I'm going to release that. And then I'm going to duplicate this circle so I can get a couple of them down. I'm going to hit my check just because I transformed it. And I'm going to duplicate this circle. Now in duplicating, you all know to hold down the Option key and click and drag, but in order for these to be lined up, I can also hold shift down, and that kind of helps me align all of my shapes together. So if I hold down Alt Option and drag, and then hold shift, watch what happens to the circle. It aligns to the top there, and I can have those all in a row there. And now I can play with opacity. Opacity is adjusting the transparency of a layer in this case. And I'm going to adjust it right here in my layers panel. And I'm going to click down here and use this slider bar. You can also type in your amount if you want it precise. So here's 30%. I can go to this next layer and make it 60% and go to my first shape layer and make it 90%. Let's look at the difference of a shape and a regular layer. Notice that a regular layer is actually titled layer. And look at these shape layers. They have the name shape in them, but they also have this interesting little box icon that is in the thumbnail. And that lets you know that it's a vector shape. Remember, vector shapes are points or vectors in a graph, right? And there's kind of little points connected by line segments. So that is the difference between a shape using a vector shape, and let's look at its different between a regular fill shape selection. Now I'm going to go to my ellipse select tool, and we've done this before. This should be nothing new, where we make a selection and then we fill it with a color. I'm going to pick something that is, let's pick this blue. And I'm going to fill this with Option Delete or Alt Backspace. And I have that. And I can move this around and set that up in the center. And now I'm going to adjust the opacity here and do the same thing. And I get this configuration. I'm going to deselect this, Command D or Control D. You can also go to Select, Deselect. And now I have this composition. Now I can change very easily these shape colors, and not so easily this fill color of the selection, but I can do it if I know enough and remember enough. Remember, if I wanted to change these shape layers, I have to go back to my vector shape here and change my color. Let's go to magenta and see what that looks like. Change that to magenta. Change this one to magenta. And that's changing. And finally, this last one, that changed. It's a little bit more pleasing. I like the way this blue violet interacts with that red violet. So I've adjusted those. If I wanted to change the color on this selection, remember this is a selection and not a shape, right? I have to do something special. If you want to select something that's already there in a layer, the quickest way to do that is to hold down Command or Control and then click inside your thumbnail right here. And when you do that, it reselects whatever's in there. And now I can actually go back and change that color if I wanted to. So if I wanted to change it to this orange color right here, I can do Command or Control Delete and backspace. So Command Delete, and there I've changed that color, and you can note that in the thumbnail as well. I like it the other way though, so I'm gonna undo and go back there. Okay guys, we discussed a lot of things. We discussed vector shapes, we discussed stroke and fill, we discussed stroke weight, and we discussed the difference between doing a selected or selection fill versus a shape fill or stroke. And we also talked about opacity. And the beautiful thing about opacity and adjusting opacity is that you get all of this color mixing for free. I mean, look at these colors on top of that are mixing with each other. A great thing to have. And of course, it's offset by everything with this really geometric constructed bridge. And then we have these soft round shapes. There's a nice contrast and juxtaposition there. All right, guys, let's do a couple of those, and I will see you next time. Take care.